I want to take some time today to talk about sustainability. Sustainability in the big, broad sense of the word. But before I do so, I want you to take some time to define what sustainability means to you. Getting grounded in your own personal understanding is crucial as we collectively navigate the world of sustainability in the everyday. It influences our supply chains, our purchases, our relationships in work and in family and with ourselves. It has the capability of having wide impacts on the world around us. Being true to your definition will enable you to forge a personal path as well as a path for your own company and your own brands. And when you're personally invested, the results can be far more impactful. This notion is what started us at Guittard on our own path towards sustainability over 155 years ago. For us, it begins with the fact that we're 5 generations of chocolate makers. Sure, we have a series of values that serve as our North Star, but it always comes down to 155 years of chocolate making as the core of why we do what we do. Digging deeper, it becomes apparent that what we do and how we do it enables sustainability in the first place. And what's the common thread there? Relationships. Before I dive deeper into just how relationships define our approach towards sustainability, both in terms of supply chains as well as our operations and vision, I want to share a bit about us as a company. In the mid-1800s, my great-great-grandfather came from France looking for gold and brought chocolate with him to trade for mining supplies. When he arrived in San Francisco, he realized that the merchants were the ones finding the riches, not the miners. Thus, he returned to France to finesse his chocolate-making skills. He apprenticed in his uncle's chocolate factory and returned to San Francisco with chocolate-making equipment in tow. The year was 1868, and he opened doors of our first factory on Sansom Street in downtown San Francisco, just a few blocks from where the piers where global goods were being unloaded from ships and used in the myriad of commodity-producing companies that were setting up shop in the burgeoning city. Now, 155 years later, we're still crafting chocolate. While not in the original factory where we made our first products, that one happened to burn down in the Great Earthquake of 1906, we're still pursuing our craft with the same innovative spirit and values on which we were built, providing chocolate as an ingredient to leading confectioners, bakeries, pastry chefs, and other wholesale businesses around the world. The values of craft, innovation, quality, and relationship are still very much present in our day-to-day operations. In fact, they're the drivers of what we do, our reason to believe, if you will. The driver of our sustainability as a business and the inspiration for how we design and engage with our on-the-ground partners. We have quite a few adages around the office. The one that is referenced the most is this idea that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. This belief grounds us in our purpose and inspires us to think big about the potential of building strong relationships both up and down our supply chain. This inspires the ingredients we source and drives the way in which we source them. Our Cultivate Better sustainability platform was established as a way to leverage these relationships. Built on 4 interconnected pillars: protecting flavor, supporting people and communities, honorable sourcing, and preserving the environment, Cultivate Better begins with flavor and incentivizing it as a value driver that weaves throughout the other pillars of the program. Most cocoa farmers in West Africa live in near poverty. Cocoa farmers in Latin America and the Caribbean share similar challenges. In these impoverished areas, access to decent education, water, and health services are limited. There is also a significant need for child protection. Aging cocoa trees, poor soil, pests, disease, monocropping, and a lack of training have contributed to low yields and low income levels. Deforestation has contributed to climate change, putting cocoa farmers at further risk of losing their main source of income. Productivity is often seen as the primary conduit for sustainable cocoa farmers. What gets lost in that narrative, however, is the principle of economics. What happens when farmers invest in highly productive plants? Well, there ensues a surplus of cocoa, which then drives the price down. Building a system where farmers are able to get a premium for their cocoa allows for differentiation within the market, a product that becomes less susceptible to market conditions, while also creating long-term value and ideally long-term sustainable investments that go back to the farm and the community. Through Cultivate Better, we're creating comprehensive programs that actually boost primary income streams by collaborating with local governments and farmers to improve and protect the unique profiles of their cocoa. At Guittard, we believe that focusing on flavor as value is the first step toward achieving long-term sustainability through our supply chain. No component within Cultivate Better lives on its own. Rather, our initiatives are interconnected. One part cannot flourish without the other, creating an integrated ecosystem designed for the long-lasting sustainability of the global cocoa and chocolate community. Cocoa is a primary source of income in many of the communities we work with. By educating farmers on flavor preservation through the use of better planting material, as well as soil health, crop diversification, and good agricultural practices, they're able to create a more valuable product. And by recognizing the value of flavor, farmers can access premium markets and build long-term relationships that improve the financial prosperity of their farms. The premiums are then directly allocated to supporting farm-level quality and flavor investments, gender equality, income diversification, health, nutrition, and agroforestry initiatives. Finding channels to increase value within the existing supply chain creates a ripple effect. With increased value comes increased income and furthermore more resources that can be put toward investments on the farm level as well as the community level. Our flavor labs are another way in which we invest in flavor for long-term sustainability. Together with the World Cocoa Foundation, USAID, and USDA, we have led the establishment of flavor labs at the National Cocoa Research Institutes in Ghana, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Cameroon, and Indonesia, along with a renewed partnership with INEAP in Ecuador and a collaborative research project with the CRC in Trinidad. These flavor labs focus on capacity building, employing in-country researchers how to taste to ensure that the planting materials that they're propagating in-country are not only being bred for productivity and disease resistance, but also for flavor. It's about flavor preservation and value creation from the ground up and as a means toward generating long-term sustainability. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. You can't make a premium end product without premium ingredients. To the same degree, you can't build a sustainable brand or business without sustainable partners and without looking towards the future beyond a short-term vision. Because sustainability goes beyond just what you do at origin and needs to be pursued 360 degrees in your business. Beyond resilient supply chains, our domestic investments enabled us to continue pushing on the pulse towards sustainability in our day-to-day operations. Focusing on minimizing our environmental footprint, we're initiating several efforts that enable us to continue the journey towards sustainability at home. In an effort to minimize our footprint of our packaging, we've committed to converting 100% of our flexible film products to 24% post-consumer recycled materials. This material allows for us to maintain product integrity and shelf life while also minimizing our environmental footprint. The PCR solution reduces our material consumption and lowers our CO2 usage across the board. In the same line of thinking, our Fairfield facility is now home to nearly 3,000 solar panels, offsetting 50% of the facility's demand. Significantly reducing the company's environmental footprint, the solar energy captured is estimated to save 1,217 metric tons of CO2 emissions per year, equivalent to removing 263 cars from the road. In further investments, all of the paper used for our corrugated materials come from SFI allocated paper, meaning that it is made at mills that are Sustainable Forestry Initiative certified and most importantly, come from SFI certified tree farms. While implementing solutions for lowering our carbon footprint or fostering long-term relationships to support sustainable supply chains, it truly is a journey and one built primarily on collaborating toward betterment. Finding ways to push ourselves to be a better company, a better partner, and a better brand, we learn through collaboration and partnership. So I return to the question that I opened with. How do you define sustainability? How can you use sustainability as a beacon toward building strong relationships that better your brand and evolve with a vision of building something towards the collective greater good? At Guittard, 5 generations later, we're on a learning path, trying to take steps to work toward not only a better business, but one that's built on long-term relationships, embracing this notion of the whole truly being greater than the sum of the parts. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy, for taking the time to deliver your session here at Confectionery Live. Let's just start off by asking you why you wanted to talk about this topic in particular.
Oh gosh, I mean, sustainability is one of those topics that I think is top of mind for a lot of folks. And I think I mentioned in my talk, I think people define it in various ways. And I think sort of talking through the importance of sustainability, not just in looking at it through one lens. I think specifically within the chocolate sector, people look at sustainability very specifically, sort of at origin and in one particular light. And I think broadening our definition of sustainability, not only trying to define what it means for us and having that sort of be the North Star to help us craft a unique approach to sustainability for our own brands is really important. I think if we all sort of take a similar approach towards sustainability, we'll end up sort of having a really narrow view, I suppose one could say, of executing sustainability. But if we all take a unique approach that's based on how we define it, then we'll potentially be more impactful as we'll all be sort of pursuing our own paths that in a way supports the adage that I was mentioning in the talk, that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Otherwise, we'll all end up doing a similar thing. And so I think it was just important to sort of share our story. We're a 150-year-old family business. I think just the nature of that, we oftentimes talk about the humility in our business and realizing that we have been able to do what we've done by being flexible, by being humble and listening to our customers and listening to our partners throughout the supply chain about how we can engage with them and craft a product that is well respected. I think that we are a sustainable business unto itself just by nature of being 155 years, but we certainly don't take that for granted. We definitely have to work on that. So I think that's an important piece to keep in mind. Hopefully that came across in the talk.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's a really good way of looking at it, I think, to not take one aspect. Certainly, I can see the challenges being multifaceted for chocolate makers such as yourself, because there's so much you can look at across the supply chain and look at your impact. With regards to the history of your company and how long you've been running, do you think this has given you a better appreciation as a brand that has lasted so long, because you can view sustainability through the lens of something that can last and something that can adapt to changes and demands and needs?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would like to think so, but I don't think that taking that approach is unique necessarily to the fact that we are 155 years. I think anyone crafting an approach to sustainability for their own brands can look toward brands that are heritage brands or that have been around for a while and recognizing that brands or even in our own lives, we have to pivot and sort of take sustainability to heart in everything that we do. And so for sure, I think as a family business, as a 155-year-old family business and 5 generations, that certainly has been a primary driver for why we do what we do. I mentioned this earlier. It is extremely humbling to think about the fact that we've been doing what we've been doing for the many over 100 years, and thinking about how we've had to shift our craft and how we've had to shift sort of how we make chocolate and the various challenges that we've faced. I didn't go into it too much, but the history of our company, my great-great-grandfather came from France looking for gold. After he set up shop, our first factory were burned down after the 1906 earthquake. We rebuilt a few blocks away, and then the city decided to build a freeway over our factory. So we had to move out of San Francisco and moved about 20 minutes south to a town called Burlingame, which is where we make chocolate today. And then we have a second facility up in Fairfield. So I think just the nature of having a business and needing to be nimble and recognizing that you can't take anything for granted. And in so doing, relationships are really important, and fostering those relationships and learning from those relationships, and being really humble and recognizing that you learn from the past and you learn from others, and others can push you to be a better company, and challenge you to try new things. And that to me, I think, is sustainability. Again, in referencing what I mentioned in the talk, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That works best through collaboration and through relationships. And I think that also has to do with just the nature of being 155 years old. You can lean on those relationships, and the past history. So.
Yeah, I think relationships across any industry are so important. Um, what would your advice be to companies who are looking to the future, looking at what lays ahead and thinking, oh gosh, we've got all these challenges, we want to think about sustainability. Would you say relationships are at the heart of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think relationships certainly are at the heart of it. I think the big piece is trying to define sustainability for you and what it means for both you and your brand. And if you have a really strong affinity towards how you're approaching sustainability, everything that you do to deliver against that, I think will have greater meaning and potentially more impact for us. Again, you can't separate the fact that we're a family business and 155 years with sustainability. And so when we look at our approach to sustainability, it is about relationships. We always say that our customers make us a better company. They push us in ways that we might not push ourselves. And to the same degree, that's how we work with our farmers and co-ops as well. They make us a better company. They, through collaboration and partnership, again, both up and down the supply chain, we're able to craft an approach to sustainability that we feel will lead to long-term sustainability throughout the supply chain. And it does come down to relationships for us.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear that. You spoke about in your presentation flavor. I would be really interested in delving into that a little bit more, um, and the work that you do in, as I understand it, preserving flavor varieties in cocoa. So could you talk about that and its significance?
Yeah, absolutely. So I alluded to it in the talk a bit. So for us, we see flavor as value, with premiums that we can give to farmers who are able to cultivate a flavor based cacao. And there are various ways of doing that. Cocoa grows 10 to 15 degrees either side of the equator. We source cocoa from all over the world. So everywhere from Ghana, Ivory Coast, Madagascar, Tanzania, Ecuador, Peru, Hawaii, even. So all over the world. And each origin and region has very different flavor profiles. There's also very different ways of post-harvest practices that are pursued in each origin. And so for us, it's not necessarily a global approach. It's very localized, and the ways in which we work with each origin and each co-op and farmer groups to help finesse that flavor and make sure that together they're able to much the flavor of that cocoa as possible. So, for instance, we've got flavor labs in a variety of origins, which allows us to collaborate with local governments to make sure that the planting material that they're working with is not only focused on disease resistance and productivity, but is also including flavor as a varietal. That planting material is then given to farmers so that the base level material that they're working with on their farms is including flavor as a variety. So, for instance, we all know what happened with the heirloom tomato. Once it was sort of propagated to a certain degree, the flavor, that really richness of the flavor in each of those tomatoes started sort of getting washed away. And so we're wanting to try to avoid that with cacao. It's also preserving heirloom varieties. So those sort of historical varieties of cacao that we know have been around for hundreds of years, not losing that. That's a piece of history. And so we're making sure through this work with these flavor labs that we're preserving that flavor and giving that material to the farmers. And the idea is that then with the on the ground partners, we're also able to work with farmers to make sure that after they've harvested the cacao, that they have the tools to be able to do post-harvest that allows for the preservation of that flavor. In some instances, farmers send us cacao that we then make into samples and will basically like a like a crude chocolate, if you will. We do a cut test to look at the quality, and then we'll do a roast, and then we'll grind it down into a liquor, and taste the chocolate and be able to engage in a dialogue to better understand sort of what the farmers could do at origin to be able to bring to life that flavor a bit more. So potentially changing some of the fermentation, looking at different drying methods, things like that. When we go to origin, which we do often, we'll work with farmers to make sure that they understand sort of the fermentation techniques, how they could get a bit more from the flavor, or get more flavor out of their beans through post-harvest. So it really is a collaboration with the flavor labs. We're working with the researchers to understand how to taste, so that when they're out in the field working with farmers, they can teach them as well about sort of flavor and the implications of flavor. We'll sometimes bring samples into farms and do a tasting with farmers as well, so they can actually understand the implications of the decisions they're making on their farms and how that impacts the end product. So again, it truly is a collaboration, and it's working sort of throughout the origin supply chain to impact sort of how the post-harvest practices influence the end product. And again, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. I oftentimes refer to that adage when also talking about our end users. We sell chocolate into confectioners, bakeries, pastry chefs. We can't make a fine chocolate without great cacao. And it's, the farmers bestow their own level of artistry to cultivating cocoa, post-harvest fermentation and drying. And it's our job to preserve that flavor in the crafting process of chocolate. And so when we get that cacao, what can we do in the crafting process to make sure that we're bringing it to life to the best possibility that we can, preserving the true intention of the beans as they're intended to be crafted. And with that crafted chocolate, we then give it to our end user, who can then bestow their own level of artistry to that chocolate. So in the end, you have this cake or bonbon or confection that is sort of this evolved artistry that begins on the farm and ends up sort of in this crafted product where everyone sort of bestowed their own level of artistry and craft. And it's that it starts with flavor preservation and sort of evolves into an end product that is the culmination of everyone's sort of passion and sustainability, if you will.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I mean, I'm just thinking, where do I sign up? So I get to taste cacao every day,
Yeah.
When you think about the history of it and how long it's been around for, it makes perfect sense that you want to preserve its history and preserve those varieties. I know in some instances there's an approach of what beans are, drought resistant, climate resistant. What beans are drought resistant, climate resilient, will grow quickly, rather than this value of flavor. And that's really exciting to hear about what you're doing and the work that you're involved in. So thank you so much for sharing all that with me, Amy, and for taking the time to talk with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much.